Today, I'd like to pursue the question that many of you have asked, and that is, are we seeing a rise in the general inclination toward narcissism in our modern age? And let's think about this in the post-World War II time. And my basic answer to that question is yes, I think we are. Let's keep in mind what narcissism is. Basically, a narcissistic individual is a very self-absorbed person. Now, self-absorption has been part of humanity literally since whenever we showed up on this planet. But when we talk about narcissism, we've got self-absorption to the point to where that individual is convinced themselves, I have to be in control. It's all about me and my preferences and my cravings. And so these individuals can be manipulative, they can be demanding, they can be stubborn, exploitive. They've got to have the superior position. These are people who have a great deal of entitlement. They want to be known as special. They tend to have a low level of understanding or care for the needs and feelings of other individuals. There can be a thin-skinned nature they have, very defensive because they don't want input from other individuals. That's what we're talking about. And let's keep in mind also that narcissism is actually a pattern on a spectrum. Some individuals have some elements of narcissism. We all do, in the sense that we all want to be controlling, etc. But many people recognize that and they keep it contained and they're way down on the low end of that spectrum. But some folks just don't really have a good handle on it, or they just don't care. And their inclination toward the narcissistic tendencies can rise. And then you have all the way to the far extreme where it becomes a personality disorder. I'd like to hone in on several key factors that I look at that tell me that we have a greater inclination towards this pattern, and you see if you would agree with me on this. Now, frankly, it all starts with the internet. The internet kind of changed everything, didn't it? Do you remember what life was like in your life prior to the internet? Now, I'm not going to say that the internet is a bad thing, because I'm glad we have it. It provides us a great deal of information. It allows us to connect through our many different sites that we have, and there's much good that's out there, and it allows us to conduct business and things of that nature in a much cleaner and better way and more readily available way. I mean, we can communicate with each other literally on opposite ends of the earth. I think it's a great thing. But along with that comes a host of other kinds of things where there are users and manipulators out there, and they can hook the average Joe or Jane to the extent that negative things can be much more readily available on a very broad basis, whether we're talking about much broader exposure to pornography and all of the manipulative mindset that goes with that, or whether we're talking about hate groups or people who are encouraging irresponsibilities and things that bring out the worst in other individuals. And then we just have the culture of the selfie, where it's like, yeah, let me take my picture there and post it for everybody to see, when I've already got 500 other posts on my latest media thing, but about 500 one's good too. We have that kind of mentality. And then, of course, we have the cell phones, and how many of you have bemoaned people being in your presence and they're so busy looking at their cell phone and texting, and you try to say something to them and they say, huh, what? We like to say it's teenagers, but there's a lot of 48-year-olds that do it too. And so it can create kind of a distancing, even though we have a greater ability to connect, it can create a distancing at the same time, and frankly, just an insensitivity. It's all about me. And I think that as we have too much of an addiction towards cell phones and the internet and some of the negative elements that go along with it, it increases our desensitization towards others. And as long as we're talking about that, we've seen a huge rise in video games. That's another subcategory. And some of the themes that has. And how many people do you know that get hooked on the video games to where it inhibits much of their personal interaction with one another? And I'll just be honest, it scares the living daylights out of me that our young men and women are having video games that are of a very violent nature, where it's kill or be killed, and we go, yeah, come on, that's good, that's really good, and then violence, and then you learn to tune people out. And then as long as we're talking about that, we can look at our entertainment industry now as compared to, let's say, 40, 50, 60 years ago. There's a much stronger inclination toward violence in our entertainment industry. I do not get it when the good sociopaths are going to be shown to beat up the bad sociopaths. Well, they're all sociopaths. And we have so many movies that, have revenues in the hundreds of millions and even over $1 billion, where it's killing, and then more killing. And we see that and we just think, well, the good guys won, but it's killing. I don't watch those things, but I think, when we have all these folks that James Bond killed, or some of these other folks, they have all these explosions. Who's going to knock on the door of that person's that got killed and say to their wife or their mother or their significant other, hey, this person got killed and now you've got a funeral plan, and there's a lot of grief and there's a lot of repercussion for years to come. When I say that in social groups, people just look at me like you're strange. Like, well, I get to hear about stuff like that in real life, and we get completely desensitized to that, and that's part of our inclination toward narcissism. We don't think about the sensitive elements in another person's life, in other words, empathy. And so the bent toward violence and things of that nature, I think, actually makes us less than wonderful people when we think about that. And as long as we're talking about the entertainment industry, let's talk about the glamour people. Why do we really have to know what some movie star wore at the beach, or what they had for supper, or who they're socializing with? Do I really need to know that? And if they broke up with somebody, well, I'm sorry that happened, but does that have to be worldwide news? And we get addicted to the glamour, and see what that does is it encourages us to emphasize the beautiful people kind of syndrome, which leads to the element of entitlement, and we're vicariously experiencing that with these individuals, as opposed to saying, they're just some regular folks that are just very decent people. You don't have to be a beautiful person for me to say I like you and I care about you and I want to know. But our worship of the entertainment industry actually leads to a higher level of narcissism. Now, there's another category, and that is we have different attitudes inside our home now because of all of the convenience that we have. I want you to think, how many times a week do you have meals at home? Or do you share chores? Now, I hope I don't sound like an old dinosaur. When I was a kid, we'd sit at the meal. We'd sit at the table and share a meal. And then when it was finished, we had three dishwashers in our home. Me, my brother, and my sister. Actually, one would clean off the table, one would wash, and one would dry. And we talked. And we had family relations. And I'm not saying our family was perfect, but there's engagement that's there. And we shared chores, and we'd vacuum and sweep out the basement and things like that. And now kids have so many outside activities that they are encouraged to be in, beginning at about age 3 or 4, literally, that those kinds of things have gone off to the side, and we don't have the same level of community. But kids can learn it's all about you. It's what you want right now. Let's take care of your needs right now. And so I think we want to be careful about that. That can lead to a rise in the self-absorption. Now, there's another theme that I know many of you are aware of, and it doesn't really matter what part of the world you live in. That's politics. Our politics have become more and more polarized. It's interesting to see some of the comments that are beneath my videos. There's some folks that'll say, yeah, all the narcissists are the liberals. In other words, I hate them, I don't agree with them. And then others will say, yeah, all the narcissists are those conservatives. and then they may say, well, all the narcissists are those who try to understand both sides. I mean, you can't win. We have a really high polarized mentality about right and wrong. Now, call me crazy, but I'm one of these that says there's a good chance that people on both sides of an issue at least have some angle that we might want to listen to. How about that word listen? That's the beginning point for empathy again. We don't have a whole lot of that. And so our politics, and then our talk shows and our TV shows that just are very argumentative and convincing and coercing, lead away from that sense of collegiality, and it leads toward the attitude that says, I have to be superior. I have to be right. And so that's yet again another element there. And then in addition to that, we have a greater emphasis with materialism. There's just so much stuff for us to buy that, and you look at what we have in our closets or in our homes, and the kind of cars we have and the kind of vacations we must have, and compare that to 50 years ago. It's like our favorite word is more. Give me more, give me more, give me more. So, do we have a rise in our inclination toward narcissism? I think these and frankly other kinds of themes would say, yes, I think we do. Now, as I wrap, I want to see if I can just kind of give you a few thoughts to ponder as we go away from this. And that is, let's pull back and see if we can appreciate a bit more of a simple way of life that emphasizes the personal dimension. My first thought is, let's make sure we give priority to face-to-face exchanges. Get to know one another on a personal level and not just on a superficial, texting each other or sending stuff on the social media sites, but actually knowing each other in a face-to-face kind of way. And then a second thought, and that is, let's make sure that when we see these kinds of themes of violence or excessive sexual promiscuity or the hate and the sense of I'm right and you're wrong, learn to look behind the scenes and realize, that doesn't really help in terms of giving us a sense of goodness and connection. It just feeds the I'm right, you're wrong adversarial mindset that goes toward narcissism. And so a third thought is, slow down, appreciate goodness, appreciate beauty, appreciate just the simple aspects of life that can bring a sense of calmness and peace. That's okay too, isn't it? Let's back away from one up, one down kind of interaction and recognize that life is not a competition. Ideally, instead of me trying to win over you, we can say, let's pool our thoughts and our feelings and our needs together and figure out how we can live in a harmonizing way with each other. That would be a non-narcissistic mindset. Does that sound a little bit better to you? So I do hope that you'll kind of be on notice as you engage with the world around you, asking what kind of things are in front of me that make me more inclined to my self-absorbed side. And then as you notice it, pull back and perhaps you can join some of the rest of us in saying, I want to be in a world that doesn't just grandize the self-absorption that I forget there are other people out there that have needs, and the way that I get my needs met is I can be tuned into other folks and have a sense of decency towards them. Novel idea, isn't it? But let's give it a try. I think we'll all be a little bit better off if enough of us can do that. And I do hope that you gain some good from videos such as this. You'll notice beneath the video that I have a subscribe button, and if you haven't already hit that, I invite you to do so that we can keep you up to date with more videos that come along. Also beneath the video, I have some information on some of my books, some of my online workshops, and then also some possibilities for online counseling, and then other kinds of resources. And I would encourage you, if you need, to go ahead and avail yourself to those as well. Just know that I'm glad to be with you on the journey. I really enjoy getting comments from you. And let's keep in mind, we're all in this together. Let's see if we can have a community that says we want to bring out the good in people. Would you join me in that?